It's our 20th year at Body Science since 1999. We've had a doping protocol in place since 2002 when we signed the Roosters. Today, accredited sports dietitian Harriet Walker joins me to talk about what really is a dope product and who gives a shit.
Hey Greg, thank you very much for having me along. This is going to be a really interesting topic, and I think one for the sports dietitians and the athletes out there to hear a little bit more detail on what actually goes into the supplement industry.
Welcome to the Body Science Podcast, bringing you everything you need, want and should know about health, fitness, nutrition and training. As always, the information contained in this podcast is for the information purposes only and is not designed to diagnose or be prescriptive to treat, prevent or manage any injury, disease or other health-related condition. Today's podcast is brought to you by Whey Ultra, a 100% whey advanced performance protein designed for results. The ultimate in post-workout nutrition, Whey Ultra boasts a 4x whey protein matrix of peptides, isolates and concentrate, is loaded with BCAAs and EAAs, and is rapidly absorbed for maximum recovery and lean muscle growth. It's enhanced with prebiotics, probiotics and 5 digestive enzymes, plus is free from soy, gluten, added sugar, artificial flavors and sweeteners, and every batch is banned substance tested. Everything your body needs for recovery, nothing you don't.
ASADA, April 2018, every month at least one Australian athlete tests positive from a supplement containing a banned substance.
That is a pretty compelling statistic, Greg.
Yeah, well, WADA's done some studies around steroids, stimulants and etc., and mainly IOC-style athletes, and 10 to 25% are contaminated.
Yep, 100%. So this is a really big problem and a very serious one if you are a professional athlete or if you're somebody who just cares about what goes into their body, knowing the ins and outs of the supplement industry and having a clear understanding of the protocols and the policies that go into place if done well, and then the other side of the coin, which is when the supplements can be done very poorly and put people's health at risk. So today we're going to have a little look through all of these ins and outs of this topic.
We're going to dive deep. And like, if you really want to ask me a question, your question would be, how does a brand in sports nutrition not get a positive dope in 20 years, considering that level of 10 to 25% of supplements?
Absolutely. I mean, that's
a good question, Harry.
That's a good
glad
question,
you asked.
Greg. I'm glad I asked, so hit me.
Look, if I can just go through a little bit of the history.
Yeah.
You know, we sponsored our first ever elite team. We had a lot of Olympians, and I even think Kenny Wallace was in the mix back in these days. Kenny, I hope I'm not throwing your age out there. I could be wrong. And the way we used to do it back in 2002, because we identified in 2002 when we short sponsored and nutrition sponsored the Roosters, hey, it's time to make some change. Going to sleep at night, it's not about giving supplements. Sponsorship is not about, here's some free supplements, knock yourself out, guys, see what I can get off you. It is not about that. The protocols, the systems, the relationships, the research, it's way deeper.
What were you seeing at that time?
Back then, it was meat pies and beers. That was your post-workout.
It was cracking.
And, you know, good on them. That's my style of post-workout too, to this date. But back then, it was really much about supplements weren't even really considered a reality back then in that level of sport. You probably talk more about an Olympian being a lot more individually focused back in those days as an athlete. You know, didn't have a support team, so their support team was them, and they definitely worked in a different capacity to a rugby league player who has a massive support base around him. So we actually got into the Roosters back then through Ronnie Palmer, and he had come to us not looking for the true use of what we were trying to do in supplements, which back then was sport and lifestyle.
Yep.
There was definitely a load of bodybuilding style brands that were dominating the world. They were doing big things. They messaged worldwide, and they helped create an industry in that bodybuilding industry, which is still very strong today, and I love that part of the world. We wanted to go for more lifestyle sport.
Yep,
It wasn't really hammered home by a lot of people back in those days. So, yeah, Ronnie got us in. He was pretty straight up in saying, I don't believe in supplements. He was sort of at the point where the team wasn't gelling the way he wanted at the time. He's a very focused, he's a great coach. And so we implemented some protocols around pre-training, post-training. Wasn't a lot of intra happening back in those days. Even in that pre-world, it was a different theory back then. It was half serves of protein with creatine and a whole lot of different theories. We had some other little products we launched early back in those days, like mycite and stuff. And the way we used to do our drug testing back then in 2002 was we would ring up every athlete that that was in that drug tested program. So your Kennys, and they'd say, hey, Kenny, how you going, mate? What's happening? Good shit. Have you been drug tested? Yeah. So I'd pull up my matrix and go, Kenny Wallace tested, taking creatine. Okay, tick creatine. Now go to my creatine validation sheet. Okay, tested on this date. That's 4 tests. We're not changing that supply chain now, guys. And I started setting up
reverse engineered the
I started
the
setting
testing.
up all these standard operating procedures that creatine person had passed 3 times. So that was our creatine supply. Now we're not changing.
That's a
And
cracker.
It didn't matter if it was $22 or $12. It was that guy we used. Then if I made another product. And we use a lot of contract manufacturing because we do everything from bars and balls to therapeutics to drinks to whatever. We go to the best manufacturing facilities we can find. And they had to take on my protocols to make our product back in those days.
Yeah, fantastic.
So if they had a creatine supplier, they'd had, and not many of them did back in those days because we had to find creatine suppliers back then. It was different. We found them. Now these days they come and show me all the good easy stuff. It's a lot easier. And with drug testing, it's way easier too. But back in those days, so we used to set these protocols up, and then we used to run ratios and matrices around our product. So if a product that had creatine in it was tested, but it wasn't creatine, we'd go to our creatine validation and revalidate that. And we ran these risk matrices, and it was a mission. It was really a lot of work, and we ran that protocol to about 2010.
Wow, so there wasn't much in place at that time.
There was really nothing. You know, there was a few people that sort of made out they did, but when you dug deep, it might have been a one-off test or a whatever, or a university that could, validate certain parts. But were they working off WADA and ASADA and the theories around the IOC, etc.? No, they weren't.
Yeah. And what do you think the biggest sort of turning point for the supplement industry in Australia was, in terms of really digging deep and getting rigorous with their certification and whatnot?
Well, I'm going to pull out Essendon. That was a massive thing for us.
That was
one of the big
peptide scandal.
Yeah,
2015.
We were Essendon supplement sponsor, and we got crueled over that. Like Nathan and I lost a heap of money on that.
Now, was that down to the misunderstanding from the consumer, the population, the general population, around the difference between like a performance enhancing peptide versus the peptides that you find in a protein?
We weren't even marketing peptides in protein. No one really was back in that time. It was, those guys were falling over needles. Let's be honest. They were not drinking supplements or taking tablets. Okay, so that's not an area I'm really going to go into. That's not my area of expertise. It's not something I believe in, and it's definitely not our brand DNA, nor will it ever be. And probably the big time for us when we first started testing is I actually published some research back in 2003 on triandrobol.
Ah, okay, cool.
So we wanted to do some mood status and some anti-doping studies.
And who was that with?
That was with the Canberra Raiders, Shane Rogerson.
Canberra.
Yeah.
My hometown.
They were very forward-thinking back then as a football team. They were into the fact that we wanted to do research and all that type of stuff. And back in those days, as Geno was running the S&C program down there, and he was very, very willing to test with us because, the AIS has always had Tribulus as a no-no from early days. I think it's a Class D supplement.
Yep.
Yeah. So we were running some tests. It didn't cause any doping. It didn't do a whole lot of things. It didn't. In fact, we didn't even actually know how it worked.
Yep.
Once we found it from the research, we need to spend a lot more money to see how it actually works.
What the actual mechanisms are.
Yeah, so there's a lot of research out on Tribulus, etc. But what we were testing, the parts we were going, we didn't really understand what we did. What we did get out of it, it is not going to make you aggressive, and it wasn't going to give you a positive dope back in those days. So that was the start of our first ever research into drug testing back in 2003, and that was published.
Yeah, wow, cool.
We did a mycelitin research back in those days too, but we didn't actually drug tests those. Yep. So that was a pretty big year for us in starting and running down that path.
Yep.
So that went on to about 2010. I think it was 2010, and I remember Professor Chris McClellan, or Dr. Mack, used to come in the office a lot. I think he was with the Titans back then. It might have been the Wallabies or one of the AFL teams. So I think it was the Titans. And I said, mate, have a look at this protocol, this matrix I'm running. This is out of control. This is too many phone calls, too many averaging out. If we brought a new ingredient out, there was that risk until we tested that. Hey, Kenny, or can you, back in there was no testing back then.
No, there's a lot of...
Everyone was just going, hey, there's no banned substance in that product.
Yeah, there's a lot of holes.
That's what it was. Inadvertent doping and all those things, they were just rampant. The stats are still rampant, 10 to 25%, according to that WADA, and that's a WADA.
Ah.
I think that's a WADA stat. So I said, Mac, I need to find testing. I need to get out of this matrix, and I need to actually prove what we're doing. No one was asking for this. Back then, no one cared. when I went and spoke to people, they just like, you what? You
Yeah,
know what I mean? Like,
why am I worried about
yeah,
this?
aren't you guys safe anyway? You don't put any banned subs and stuff. And that's
Not
what it was like.
deliberately,
Yeah.
no, yeah.
And we didn't. We were true to label, and we've always been true to label. So Mac went out and he went around the world, looked at a few little things that popped up. There's one in the US that is used by certain companies. It doesn't test every batch. It didn't have a validation method that we were happy with as a brand if we were going to go down this path of. Because once you tell people you're testing, your risk level goes through the roof because now you know there's a problem, or you should have picked up a problem, or the risk matrix goes from, well, there is no testing, what do you want me to do? To
you can turn a blind eye to stuff.
Yeah, or you can cut a corner. There's so many things you can do.
Yeah.
So Macca went.
Willful ignorance. Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Mac went out and he found LGC in the UK.
Yep. Okay.
So my program then he came in every month and took, I think it was 5 products at random, sent them to the UK on our behalf because I wanted to keep third-party independence because we really were taking doping seriously as a brand and no one else was. And so he would send those across to the UK and it would come back, yep, it's okay. And then we were doing that. We were spending a shitload of money on that. Like that was costing heaps. But we weren't doing like a certification where we were still running through our traditional, I was still using the matrix a little bit and all this. Then we started creating some new products. We got fairly aggressive around that time in, I think our SKU count went up to hundreds.
Hundreds?
Yeah, we had a big range back then. It was massive.
So a lot of supplement companies might have 6, sort of maybe 10 different products?
Yep.
So you were talking, you had over like 100 products?
Well, we've got 130 now, I think.
Wow, okay.
And we've got 4 or 5 more new ones coming out soon. So we're going to hit 150 soon again.
Epic.
So it's getting up there again. Macca went, and then I went to Raw. I said, mate, if I'm going to make this product, I don't know this supply chain. I now need to start testing raw materials. So I was putting all this pressure on our brand that no one cared for, no one paid for, and no one was still asking for. You know what I mean?
Of pocket.
Yeah. So we'd start testing raw materials, and oh my God, the number of them that had banned substances was
Where are we
through
getting
the
them
roof.
from?
Wherever, whoever trades,
What were some of the biggest countries that had them?
States, China, herbals are coming from India and places like that. A lot of
really
your powders
hard to
with New
control
Zealand.
quality.
Like you look at a sports supplement now, it's a mix of vitamins, aminos, herbals. There could be 10 countries involved in. Well, and that's where the risk comes in, say, supplements. Yeah, like you can't control. So what we set up around this time, so Macca had gone overseas and was testing random batches. We were testing raw materials. So I put into place an auditing program with our manufacturers. So we listed every single WADA banned substance and we went out to our manufacturer and they had to sign off and tick every single ingredient and say, yes, it's not in our factory. Then they had to go a level deeper and go to their supply chain and say they weren't in their factories.
So 2 layers
of
certification
now,
there.
Let's be honest, a lot of nutritionals come from China and stuff like that. I don't know where they were at. That was the reliance was on the manufacturer there. We had the agreement with them. They had done these 2 levels. So, and I say to them, if we get a positive dope, I'm coming straight to you and I'm going to go, you said you don't have it and your manufacturer didn't have it. What happened? So to be a manufacturer of ours in those days, people weren't overly keen to jump on board a lot. So we had really good manufacturers because they're the ones who would say, yep, our systems and operations are good. So you can imagine the stress that I was throwing on these guys when I said, I want to use these 4 new ingredients. They're like, oh, shit, now I've got to go back and check with my manufacturer, check the trial. And when you start talking things like superfoods and things like that, and a lot of people don't know this, like that whole raw superfood thing, there is ingredients hitting Australia now where you can't even get a certificate of analysis on because they actually don't know where it came from.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's a big industry. The supplement industry is, it's blown up from 2000 to now. It's epic. And that's 20 years. Yeah,
so we've seen some really interesting things happen over time in relation to that. So we were testing, stepping forward again, I was getting a lot of dopes and I go, oh shit, let's test it again. And then you wouldn't get a dope on the same thing. And I go, oh, and then Macca gives me the positive, negative, da-da-da. So we'd have to test it again. And I go, okay, and then we use it because I'd set the protocol, any new ingredient we had to be tested. So not realising the pressure I'd put on ourselves. So then and LGC was part of Informed Sport. And we launched Informed Sport in Australia. For those people who don't know, we did a massive launch with them. It was a great brand. They were doing really good things.
So they're the testing.
And, we were going out to everyone saying we're this and no one cared.
the awareness across the community
no
wasn't
gave a
there.
shit, yeah.
And I suppose people aren't really hearing about these inadvertent
A lot of people
dopings.
don't care anyway. Like you're talking purity. Like even if you don't care about what you're putting in your mouth,
Yep.
purity. You know, like purity is everything.
True to
you know?
label.
Yeah, like it's so. We had everyone. We had Laurie Daly, who was the coach of New South Wales Origin team. Like the people who really mattered turned up. The Sam Burgess, the James Magnuson, all those guys. They turned up to say, yes, we're clean athletes, we're clean sport, and we launched Informed Sport, and that to me was when I started sleeping again, because all of a sudden, and we tested every product we had back then.
That's across the whole range.
Well, we launched by testing everything. Yeah, we were spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on testing, like mega dollars, big dollars. So we went down that path. Well, then what we realised was there's subs that athletes demand, and there's supplements that, depending on their lifestyle, they want to use. And so now we've broken our brand up into 3 different brands.
Yep.
So we've got our range, that is our sport and fitness range, that is where nearly everything's tested.
Yep.
Then we've got a second batch testing program where, you might be an athlete that wants a shred product, for example, and I'm not going to batch test that because the consumer and the avatar we make that product for doesn't care. They want weight loss, they want performance, they want energy, all the things that come with that. But we still will test a batch on the side, and we will quarantine it in our factory now. And if you're an elite athlete that we know about or in our team or one of our teams, and you ring up, we will only ever say you can only ever have drug-tested products. So you might like blue lemonade, but you're getting passion fruit this month because that's where
the certification is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just like an overview of all of that. So, starting in 2002 with the Roosters, there was no impetus for anybody to be doing testing, and it wasn't really a big issue.
It was more knowledge back then. It was like, hey, what is a whey protein? What is a...
Yeah, how does it work?
Yeah,
what does it do? What are the benefits?
Yeah, everyone
recovery,
knows what it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then, 2015, there was a big shake-up in the industry with the Essendon doping case there, and that probably tainted the supplement industry quite heavily because people weren't necessarily understanding the difference between injectables versus, food-based
and
whey
it wasn't being
proteins.
put across that way in the media either.
No,
that wasn't that's not cool and sexy.
The media has
the sport was using needles. That's not sexy. Supplements. Wow. It's
on the whole were being.
And what's a supplement? Everything from a green drink to a multivitamin to a protein to a therapeutic
electrolyte drink.
To an electrolyte drink. There's some basic stuff in that word, and it really crueled the industry in that.
And so Body Science now, where we're standing, is there's 3 ranges, one of which is pretty much predominantly certified.
Every product in that is certified.
Yeah. And then when it comes to certification, there's 2 different arms you can go down. So one is the batch testing where...
No, with certification...
Yep.
And you're right, but I'm just going to get the words right here.
Yep.
Certification is every batch.
Yep.
That's a massive commitment to verification of samples from different batches, independently ordered manufacturing systems. Once it's certified, we can't sell that product until the test comes back. That's the difference between a batch test and a certification.
Yep.
So certified means the logo's on the front.
Yep.
And look, I probably jumped a little bit here. We're now using a brand called Hasta, and support Aussies where we can support Aussies. Hasta has the same history as Informed Sport and LGC, because LGC, they do the horses and the dogs and that, and that's that's run the same way as the WADA runs its human one. So you can't get one of those products tested, see how it is.
When it comes to supplement testing, you've got 2 options to use it within Australia. It's the Informed Sport or it's Hasta.
They're the 2 that you have laid down the path and the grounds and done the hard work.
And there's certain certifications that you have to have in order to even test.
It's not the other Informs, it's Informed Sport that matters.
Yep,
okay?
Absolutely.
Anything else is a low level, and the risk is not much different to what it is in taking normal. Testing one batch in a worldwide whatever, or saying a factory's got, a quarantine process doesn't stop an inverted dope.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So those, they're on there for people who are... it's good. You've got to step into this. It's a big commitment to your company. It's a massive operational change. It's expensive to run. And, I commend people who are stepping into it that way. But no, if it's not Informed Sport or Hasta, it's not the safest possible. It's not perfect. Neither of those are perfect either.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in a second.
When it comes to
the batch testing you mentioned,
using HASTA or informed sport, we've got two options that people can look for. So if I'm taking a certified product, essentially I can ask you for any flavour, and every single one of those,
if it's got that certified logo on it, that product is, every batch is tested. But someone might only certify the chocolate though. Don't be fooled into that. It just means chocolate's always tested, okay? It means you can get your routines and you always get what you want.
Absolutely.
Whereas batch testing, and we do 2 levels of batch testing. We batch test our products. So we do a lot with like national cricket. I won't say names because I don't like saying the names. And national sporting teams and a lot of stuff that aren't, official sponsorships or maybe official sponsorships or partnerships. We will often talk with their team and they'll go, I'm using this product, this product, and this product. We'll go and get another brand tested for them. And it's only that batch with that number on the side of the jar that is okay, that we will get tested.
So it's the specific container that you've got.
There's a lot of things we don't make. We don't make fish oil, for example. And if you've got a S&C dietitian combo that love fish oil, well, fish oil's in there. We don't make a fish oil, so we'll go get a fish oil for them. We'll get it tested for them. And then it will go into their supplement regime for that trip or that tour or whatever they're doing.
Amazing.
So we do a lot of that because it's just something we offer. We do a lot of that with overseas teams as well. That's probably one of the big ones because they come in, they might have some of their stuff as well and some of ours, and
And I've been checking out the Body Science website, so that's just been updated. And what I really like about the website now is the transparency. So if you are an athlete using Body Science products, or if you're a dietitian working with the Body Science supplements, you can actually go on to it's under the drugs testing tab. And
I think it's drug tested. I think is the wording, and it's at the top of the website.
Top of the website. It's very clear. So you can actually do the drop down, and you can search for the product, and it'll come up with a PDF link to every single certified product on there. Which is, I don't think
you can view it or print it.
Doesn't get much easier than that, and that's something you could provide to as a part of your supplement policy. But what also,
and I would tell every athlete that's ever used a product of ours to put those on file.
Absolutely.
Because, if shit comes to shove and we want to go to take on what's happened, we can go, look, here it is.
Absolutely. And I think that we can have a chat about that later about, who's responsible. And it is always the athlete who is responsible.
It's Mr. Athlete and Mrs. Athlete and Ms. Athlete.
But also the policy that Body Science has is clearly stated in terms of not only are you doing the HASTA or informed sport certification, but also your supply chain has been certified.
Absolutely.
And you stay with the same people.
It's like has to say, earned, not bought. You've got to earn the right to have their certification on your product. And, the HASTA team are amazing. If anyone is making a supplement, go and get it validated by those guys because they are so good to work with. Australian, and they run the same thing. They were horses and dogs the same way, so that's run the same way. They can't test jockeys. They actually are the testing agency like WADA is for athletes. So for them to do what they're doing with us is the complete opposite. They're taking the technology they have on testing for banned substances and they've commercialised it to assist companies like us in trying to add another layer for an athlete that wants to use a nutritional product.
And this is something I don't think people really appreciate within the supplement industry. Is there, when it comes to being an athlete, you might be trying to do the right thing, and but you can still, anytime you take a supplement, there is always the risk of an unintentional contamination, and this can happen if, like you were saying before, if you've got a plant in China who's producing creatine, but they're also using
DHEA.
And all it takes is one tiny little speck of that to fly into the creatine powder, and you've got an inadvertent dope.
Exactly. And you know what? When you look at ingredients like that, if you don't know where the factory, where it's coming from, and they don't have the right protocols, licenses and that around food safety, sports nutrition, therapeutics, TGA, whatever it is, you just don't know what you're getting.
Absolutely. And also,
if you're just banging shit out all day, and you're not doing clean downs and you're dropping the next lot in, and you play with something like DHEA, it's such a light, fine powder that you can almost not do a clean down. That's the problem that comes out, a lot of the ones that come out of China, because you can buy, we used to be able to buy DHEA over the counter in the US. So that stuff is so fine. They do a clean down. Like, even if they're running great protocols, like we're running that today and we're going to do a clean down, it's so light that it's in the air.
Yeah, it
that
could lay down.
you're cleaning and it's settling behind you. Then you go outside, shut the door, and it goes up in the air again. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So,
And I think people like the inadvertent doping, like people might not. And when you're going up to do your, if you have a doping positive and you're going up to, for your trial, there's no, it doesn't matter if you didn't mean to.
Yep.
That's what people, need to understand. And when you look at within Australia, I think there was a study from JCU of 100 anti-doping cases, 23 were people who just they didn't know, or it was inadvertent. They didn't mean to. It was a supplement that was tainted. And one thing that's also really interesting, I find, is the different labelling across in different countries. So I know in America, there is very little impetus on the brand to get their labelling correct. They can sort of put the TGA, no, who's the FDA? FDA.
FDA in the States,
they're very lax with what a supplement.
And look, I could be wrong here because I haven't looked at a lot of FDA rules, but it used to be the onus of proof was once you've been pimped on or you're in trouble, you now got to prove what you've put forward. So
it's innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, or rock and roll and see how you go.
Yeah. And I also find very commonly, having worked in supplement shops all through my undergrad, there was a couple of years there where there'd be one every few months where we'd have to okay, that's off the shelf now.
Put the price up and stick it under the counter.
Under the counter, that does happen.
The good old days, hey?
There's also, there's things like double labelling. So a product comes from America. Our labelling laws are different in Australia, so they'll just whack another label over the top and happy days.
No testing,
it's compliant, happy days. Then the other one is using different names for banned substances. So you'll find there's a herbal name and then there's a chemical name for a product, and that can be quite confusing for the consumer. So they might be taking something. I think there was one like a hornbill something, and it actually turned out to be 13 something. So we've got these double labellings, we've got double names. Obviously
Australia is one of the most stringent places in the world when it comes to trying to work what they call a clean label.
Absolutely. And I think that's the really important thing for people to sort of take home. It's not about for athletes and for the general population, of course, it's about safety, but also knowing that you're getting what is in the package. Because I know a lot of American brands will use proprietary blends, and it's under the guise of protecting their special formula, but you don't actually know what you're getting. And there's a lot of misinformation because a lot of people are getting, recommendation from their mate at the gym, a little bit of bro science in there, telling them it's going to, make their biceps 10% bigger by tomorrow morning, which would be awesome. But unfortunately, it just doesn't happen that way.
The good thing, they probably had the right theory there with the proprietary blend. Like there is no protection in nutrition, sports nutrition, therapeutics like there is in medicine. So you don't get your 25-year patent protection or whatever it is in medicine. So the theory was probably really clever that someone went down that path. But as it got bigger and bigger, it became somewhere where you could hide. You launch it, go to market with a product, and you're putting shitloads of an active in a product, that's great results.
Yep.
Next batch, halve it. Batch after that.
Yep.
Let's go a quarter. Batch after that. As long as, and I assume with proprietary blends, it's still highest to lowest. As far as
I think so.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm not 100% sure on that because we've never done one. But it's definitely a theory that in the early days is a bit of IP protection is needed because we want people to invest in the industry and grow the industry and do the right thing by the industry. But these days, a proprietary blend is someone who's just got something to hide. You know what I mean?
That means there might be stuff in there that doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah, there's and that's probably why the medical industry is not a massive fan of the supplement industry and. So
a couple of cowboys in there.
Yeah. One of the big things that happened back when Essendon helped Nathan and I lose a heap of money was dietitians took over supplements. It was definitely owned by the S&C coach back in those days. The dietitian was pretty much maybe doing some meal planning and coming and doing some skin folds.
I think that's a really good place for us to be, 100%. I think it's a space that sports dietitians are really well trained.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not only, nutrition experts, but we've also got that scientific background, so, nutrition science, able to read the papers that look at the studies that, prove the efficacy of the ingredients. So when it comes to being assessing the efficacy of a supplement, we need to make sure that it's safe, that it works, value for money for the person taking it.
Yep.
And in many cases, people are getting their information, I find they're getting them from their friends, they're getting it from the internet. When you can buy supplements over the internet without the extra layer of advice from a qualified health professional, you're really opening yourself up to a lot of risk.
Well, look at that young guy that had the caffeine and the protein the other day. That's devastating.
I did an Instagram story on that just the other night. For background, there was a young man in the Blue Mountains who recently, at the end of last year, passed away from caffeine toxicity. So he overdosed on caffeine.
You've got to work hard to overdose on it too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And caffeine, generally speaking, in Australia, and it is not sold in a powder form because of that very risk. But the media had labelled as a protein shake had death.
Exactly.
And it's like, that's very misleading, which is really propagating that confusion amongst the consumers. He had received a powdered form of caffeine. Now, caffeine is dosed in 100 milligrams per serve or, 3 milligrams per kilo. So
he's been out on the piss all day because he wanted to get rid of a hangover cure, was the reason he made it. He's probably spooned up, yeah.
He put a teaspoon, which would have been close, I don't know, a teaspoon's 5 grams. Wow. That's 5,000 milligrams of caffeine, which is probably 5 times more than what like a toxic dose would be. Like when you're taking 1,000 milligrams of caffeine, things are starting to get really shaky in your body. And
this is one of the dangers of the sports nutrition industry too, is the knowledge and the validation. Why would you take caffeine and protein before bed
as a hangover cure? Where did you get that information from? So
first thing in the morning, yeah, maybe, but before you go to bed. But obviously not that much. But
the caffeine before bed.
Yeah, what was going with that?
It just shows a really, there's a really unfortunate case. Like I was really sad to read it.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But it also makes me quite angry that there's people, there's still that lack of control over the information. It doesn't have to be control, but it's informed knowledge about why you're taking a supplement. And very commonly people are like, why am I actually taking this? You're like, well, that's a conversation you need to have before you put it in your mouth. You need to, as an athlete, you need to know where it's come from. You need to have the conversation with your team about, how to take it, when to take it, because you can also just be taking things more than you need to and, throwing your money away.
Yeah, why? And we have a program, like we've got a very in-depth in-house doping program here. One of the things is the teams that we deal with, we have an agreement where there's products that are validated as being okay. And then we have a second layer where the dietitian, strength coach, and that can say which supplements are in that program as well, outside of, the basics. Some teams are really into gut health, some are into greens, some are into a whole lot of different things. So therefore, only certain people from those teams can put an order in.
Yep.
And if an athlete rings, we go back to the club and say that athlete wants this, they approve to take that product. So we spend more money and time on monitoring that internally as well. All of our staff are trained in anti-doping. We have a system where our batch-tested products like Shred's a popular product with athletes, whether dietitians like it or not. And it is very popular with our athletes, and it is not made for athletes. Mm-hmm. It's made for general pops that want to go and whack out a HIIT session, get into fitness, people who want to stand on stage.
Is it a therapeutic?
It's a therapeutic, it's a listed medicine. Ours is. I don't believe there's any others. Ours is a listed medicine. So we go that extra level again, and I'll talk about the extra steps of validating in therapeutics in a second. We have those quarantined in out the back. We keep the clubs up to date with what we do. Mm-hmm. We send out regular, we got these products, we got this. And, bars are another thing. I had chats with Inform Sport and Hasta, and they're probably not going to like me saying this, but we were running, about 32 ball SKUs and making them every month and landing them. And back then to run those certifications was 2 weeks before you could sell them. They just couldn't keep up. Okay, so we were just making them so fast and they just couldn't keep up. The volume on those products is huge. And I sat down with, and and they're probably not an easy product to test either, like a tablet. You can much jump and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember I spoke to Inform Sport about it first, and they sort of said, Greg, I think the risk on those is so low, I wouldn't even do it. Save some money.
Yeah.
And I understand a brand that's got one bar would test theirs. I get that. I'd do it too.
How many flavours have you got?
Yeah, in 2 bars, yeah. We test shitloads of bars and we don't have them certified. So we have low-carb bars, clean bars, cookies, balls. They're all tested, but you may not get the flavour you love to death this month. We mix it up a little bit. They're quarantined. So they put aside our team, and like we walk out in our factory all the time and go, I want some quarantine balls, and they go straight to the quarantine section, bring them out. The batch certificate is up on the web that you can go download to say it is. And if there's a team going to India or somewhere on a long haul, we will go and test specific batches for them. We even have other teams that aren't in our program come to us, and we will just pass on costs to. We don't make money on it. We just send it off to ASTA. They know it's a priority if we're asking for it because we believe that club needs to leave. They need to do what they're going to do. And we'll test products for other people as well. So it's an interesting protocol that we've got. It's deep.
I want to know a little bit more, and this is something that I've had to sort of dig into myself, but the differences between, say, like a formulated sports food versus like your therapeutic and which avenues you have to go through in order to be validated, tested with those products.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's nice for you to throw one back at me for once. Under the formulated sports food, I think it's 2.9.4.1. Yeah,
a lot of dots.
Is the rules and regulations for a sports food. The protein level, the vitamin levels, all the rules and regulations. So there is no pre-testing on that. So you're hoping when you take that product that they've gone to a highly licensed and accredited facility that has good operating procedures, good procurement procedures, and obviously safety and handling and the way they run foods and the processes. So there's a lot of different levels of, and so what we're talking there is things like your protein powders, a lot of your amino vitamin mixes, your bars, your balls, your electrolytes, those type of products. If somebody wants to make a serious claim on one of those products, they can make it a therapeutic if they want.
Okay.
But this is where the testing comes in. You've got to validate each ingredient before it goes in. And that's not send a certificate off. That's send it for analysis to get it validated that it is that.
Yep.
So you've actually got to go, this is guarana, and this is what guarana should look like chemically. Now tested doesn't meet it.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
So then you make the tablet or whatever, the powder, and you test it again. Yep, all those things we just tested are in it again. Then you run a batch test that, yes, it is in it at 3 months, it is in it at 4 months, or it might be 6 months. It depends on, if you're using a really tested, say you're using vitamin C.
Yep.
Okay. That's so tested, so validated. You might run that program where that's every 3 months that gets tested to expiry date. Because we don't know how everything acts with everything.
Yep. And so in terms of disintegrating over time.
Yeah, zinc, iron, B vitamins, they all fight each other at some stage. They get, something happens somewhere.
Inhibit.
Above my pay grade, but I understand the theories and things behind it. So we test along the way for that 2-year or 14-month or 3-year expiry date so that it is still at label claim on expiry date.
Wow.
So, and then with a therapeutic, you're allowed to make certain claims.
Yep. Because
the TGA has deemed those type of claims as being safe for that ingredient. So you can't just go and say, hey, I want this new XYZ ingredient if it hasn't been validated by them first as being safe for use. So there's like a list of things we can use. You can take that ingredient and get it listed, and thank you for those companies that do, because everyone else just jumps on the back of it and rides the wave of success there. So it's an expensive game for the first company to do that.
Yep.
But it's a fairly substantial list. But when you look at pre-workouts, for example, that list is not keeping up with what's being thrown in pre-workouts in America. And some of the things being thrown in there are for some when you read the research on where that idea came from, you go, oh my God.
Yeah, we cannot keep up with.
That is something that's out of this world.
And then you look at the
some of it's unreal. Like some of it is, it's just so forward thinking and revolutionary. Some of it is, oh my God, that's dangerous. That should not be in a product.
That's like one molecule away from the...
Yeah, what are we doing here, people? We're a sports nutrition. We are not a medicine. And that's something our industry really needs to step back and go, your sports nutrition, your general food, your fitness food, whatever you want, word you want to call it, we are not high-end clinical medicine. Like the word clinically dosed, and we use it.
Yeah.
Because someone's done research or someone's using it at those clinical levels. So that word
It's important that you know that when you're buying a supplement for a specific purpose, say creatine, that the supplement that you're having has a clinically validated dose to get the desired effect.
And there's a big grey wall in those areas too, because when you look at creatine, traditionally back in the old days, it used to be 5 gram serve, pretty simple. You know what I mean? You want to load it 4 times a day, 20 grams, 20, things are revving up in 6 or 7 days versus waiting 28 days for the result. In food law, under the formulated sports food, it's 3 grams a day. So it's a maintenance dose is the level that you can put in. So there's little rules there that sometimes don't work with, but that's what they have deemed as what they want to call safe under that.
Okay.
If you were to make that product a therapeutic.
So we've got a little bit of opposition between what is clinically tested as being effective
and
versus what's deemed safe from a safety perspective there. Okay, so that's how you make your decisions around formulations as well.
It has a lot. Look, a lot of people will go, I don't care.
Yeah, of course.
And everyone's done that. Everyone can put their hand up and say, because let's look at things. Some of the things you can't make a claim in foods, like sports foods. There's certain things you can say, but you can't make claims. And I remember we had a sports drink one that said energy, and someone's dobbed us in. That's how everyone gets to know who you are. They've come in and they've gone, oh, you've got energy on the front. And I've gone, are you sure that's a problem? And they've gone, yep, you're making a claim. Energy's a claim. And I've turned over the nutritional panel and said, what's the first line there? And it's energy.
Yep.
Just so that was there's a problem in the industry in that space. But, and I would love to see a lot more regulation in food law.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd actually like to see every product has a registration number and every person selling the product has gone through some type of education to be able to sell products.
That would be delightful.
Well, you know what? Everyone's probably going, oh, shit, listen to that dickhead right now. But, yeah, it's going to hurt everyone for 3 or 4 months, but I think the industry would just explode because it's a trusted industry.
I think when you look at the figureheads of when you're looking at who's at the forefront of nutrition.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're looking at the forefront of nutrition recommendations, a lot of the time it's not a qualified health professional giving the recommendations. Somebody who may be well educated, but there might be somebody who has just read off a bodybuilding.com website something that does something and isn't able to actually assess the information properly.
In their defence, they do put good information on bodybuilding.com.
Well, they've done their research. Yeah. I've read some.
It's more when they get deep into Google.
I've read some journal articles and I've done my research. If I hear that line, I'm like, bro, come on.
Yeah, I know. We cop a lot of it in our customer service. Like, people are just experts.
Yeah,
experts.
It's like Harry Potter's
and
cupboard.
You go to the effort to send the research, send some podcasts that have been, but from you and Dr. Mac and people who are very, very clever and very educated and in their lane, and they come back and go, don't bullshit me with that crap. You know what I mean? I just go, mate, seriously, jog on.
There's always going to be a hater.
Yeah. So, and there are people who hate supplements. I get it. Like, there's a lot of people that hate supplements.
But I think it's important to understand that nobody has ever said that supplements are anything other than supplements.
They are. With the way we work on it, if you've got your base right, your food right, your training's right, your mental space is right, supplements are what we use to go that next level.
Yeah, performance enhancements.
They definitely do not cater for poor training and poor diet.
No, absolutely. I think, that...
Unless you're ripping into caffeine, that can give you something you can't train
That gives
for.
you some wings, yeah. I would like to know, actually, this is a question. Yeah. What happens when you've got a supplement like, say, your Nitrovol, you've got a whey protein, is that tested before it goes in, and then we've added some carbohydrate, and then we've added some creatine?
Okay, so it's not a therapeutic product, it's a food, so the answer is no.
Okay.
So when I say not tested, it's not tested the way I told you before in relation to a listed medicine, which is what we play in with a fair chunk of our products, our tablets, our shreds, etc. What it is tested for, it's sent out for testing on, there'll be a whole lot of bugs that we test for, that we'll test for protein content to make sure the protein content's correct. If it's got a gluten-free claim.
Yep.
So if it says gluten-free, it is batch by batch tested for gluten. Mm-hmm. If it says does not contain gluten, it's running the manufacturer's guarantees that there's no gluten in their product.
Yep. Okay.
So it comes down to the end consumer when we do that. Like, some people demand gluten-free. Some people just want to know it doesn't have gluten in it. So we're not testing that there's 3 grams of creatine in that for you. You're just believing that our brand's been around 20 years. We've got a heap of elite teams. We're under a lot of scrutiny as a brand at the high level of sport. Dietitians are now got all this authority and challenging everything that happens since the Essendon days. And while, it's a pain in the ass, it's a really good thing that they've got control on that. Like
You've got to ask the questions. It keeps you honest.
Yeah, that's one of the good things that came out. That study, and then we run random tests on stuff all the time to make sure our manufacturers are staying true to what they tell us too.
But when you've got the 3 different components, when does in terms of like a contamination safety risk thing, whey protein before it goes into the powder or after are you testing it 3 times?
Okay, so when we certify or batch test,
yep,
it's post manufacture.
Okay, so it's all the components are together.
So with certification. We still get ingredients and send them down to Hasta and say, will you test that ingredient for us? Because I'm not going to go and run 700,000 tablets to find out it's got a positive dope. You know what I mean? We do a lot of things before products are made. Like our sleep formula.
Yep.
It doesn't have the certification on it, but it's tested.
Yep.
And when I worked with the German researchers in Blueness and Recoverbin around, the brain and the muscle side of that product, which is really clever, they're great researchers, this crew, that was Informed Sport tested for us before it came.
Yep. Okay.
So then we has to tested it after that.
So double.
Yeah, but we put kava with it and some other things with it to bring that calming effect on. So we've added to that, and then we put it through a different factory to be manufactured. Like a TGA plant, you don't know what the batch before was, or if it's coming from another country, you definitely don't know.
Yep.
When I'm manufacturing the manufacturer, they don't give me a list of what was manufactured the week prior to mine being made. That's where the belief in your manufacturing process, and that's why the third-party validation after manufacture is so important.
Yeah.
So back to your Nitrovol product, for example, we have suppliers that we trust. So we have a relationship with our manufacturer who has signed that they don't have any of those banned substances. Yep. They've gone to their supply chain and all the ingredients and gone, yes, they've said they don't have it. So then we start manufacturing. Mm-hmm. They put these products in, and you've got to understand a lot of ingredients, like say you're talking acetyl-L-carnitine, for example, that comes in 25 kilo drums.
Yep.
We're putting 4 grams per serve, 30 serve, and we're making 20,000 units of it at a time, that type of thing. You're lining 3 of those tubs up to actually make one batch of product. So when you talk about a batch, it's not a batch. It could be technically 20 batches of things make up one batch.
Yep.
Whey protein comes in a 25 kilo bag.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So there might be a batch of those, but they're not sitting there going, I just saved that one batch for Body Science. They're going, I've just made this protein for someone and now I'll make this protein for someone. So there is a lot of risk in an untested supplement because you don't know what they've made. You don't know what the manufacturer's made. So that's why we say jump on our web. You can be in a shop and look at a batch number on a shelf and go, hey, does this batch of water, L1764 appear on their website is tested, and it might go, no, it's this batch number is the latest one that's tested. So you look in the shop and see if they've got it. If they don't, the shop can ring up and get one of our drug tested ones sent to them, or they can go to their team or however it works.
Yeah, so I think that's actually a nice little point for people who don't know. If you are an athlete who wants to make sure you're doing the right thing, because we've discussed this earlier, it is the athlete at the end of the day. It's not your S&C coach, it's not your mate, it's not your dietitian.
No. It falls back on the athlete.
It falls back on the athlete. The team around them is going to be doing their due diligence as well.
And we owe what we, as a brand that wants to be in sport, and I put this out for any brand that wants to be in sport, they owe it to an athlete to do everything they possibly can.
Absolutely. So this is WADA will never endorse any supplement taking, because as you can hear from this conversation, they're actually, even when you're doing all the right things, there's still a couple of areas where things can sort of fall astray.
So here's something, if I could just read this off the Hasta sheet that's here. ASADA and WADA labs can detect drugs in an athlete from samples via urine, but under their charter, they cannot test, certify, or endorse any supplements commercially.
No, so they won't.
So as soon as someone writes on their website that it's ASADA approved or WADA approved, warning bells.
Yep, so that's not quite correct.
Cheap marketing, I want to make a sale.
Yep, absolutely.
Where's the systems and procedures in place on that? And I mean, accidents can happen, but that's a no-no.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the actual activity of checking, what you do is you go to your product, you pick it up, and you'll look for the batch number, which is next to the barcode in many cases.
Most times it's a white line at the bottom of a label near a barcode.
And it'll have batch.
It might be on the lid on some products for some people or under the jar for some. It all depends on the manufacturer. They've all got a different way to do things.
Yep. So we're looking for the batch though.
Yep.
Batch.
It should say the batch number or expiry number or something.
And then it's just a 21309 in this case. You can take that number. We can either plug it into the Body Science website. Asada has a new app, which is...
The Asada app's great. It's certified though. It's products with the logo. So, for example, with us, there would be 60 or 70 products that are not on that because it's only our core products that every batch can't release to market until it's been tested and all that blah, blah that goes along that line of certification.
Yep. But once you've got that number, you can plug it into either Body Science website, or if it happens to be the certified product, it'll be on the Asada Clean Sports app. And it'll pop up with the certified document that says that this product is being tested.
And that's a really clever app because I was part of the people they spoke to when they were making that and with Hasta. And it was the way they've created the sections and the searching and everything.
It's very easy.
It's very easy to use. But once again, there's a lot of brands out there that will test a batch that's not got the certified certificate on it.
Yep.
And you need to go back to the manufacturer to get those.
Yeah, and you want that piece of paper. You want to be able to provide it to your team, or just keep it on file for your own safety if you're an individual athlete.
Yeah, and it's one of the things we live by. Like as soon as we get a test result, we put it up. It's one of our standard operating procedures on a day-by-day basis. It's something we believe
You can
in.
actually look up the SOP for Body Science on their website as well, which is really useful. But I reckon this is a good time to wrap it up. We've been going for hours. This is really interesting. But so basically, long and short, when it comes to supplementation, we want to make sure it's safe. We want to make sure it works. We want to make sure, that what is on the label is in the product. We've got two companies that are quite prominent in Australia, the Hasta and the Informed Sport, that are going to be doing
And we launched both of those brands in Australia. First to go to market with both those brands.
Both of those. As an athlete, it's up to you to be in charge of your body, what you put in your mouth, and making sure you're doing the due diligence. And just really understanding that, contamination can happen. And as we've just spoken about, is actually quite obvious how it can
happen from the raw material. It can happen from the manufacturing process.
Poor labelling.
It can happen from, factory sops that aren't good. And so all of a sudden this ingredient's in the wrong bay. The guy walks up, grabs the ingredient, pours it in. He's not reading the
Human error.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in play that can cause doping.
So, and I think it's the direction that Body Science has been taking the forefront from, 2002. But I think the new website has just gone that extra level of transparency where you can read about their operations, you can read about the policies that are in place, and all the procedures that they have chosen to put in place, and also how you can just download your certification off the website, which is really cool. So,
and Harriet got to sit through this morning talking to Jane Hasta about a new product we got coming out, the Tenderfort.
Yeah, and Jane's going to be at the SDA conference in October, which is cool.
So reach out to her, everyone. She's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, super interesting. So I've definitely learnt a lot through working with Body Science and being able to ask those questions. So thanks.
Today's podcast was brought to you by our partners in Fit, Happy and Healthy, ASN, Nutrition Warehouse, DY Discount Vitamins, Fat Burners Only, Evelyn Faye, Mr. Supplement, or find a retailer online at bodyscience.com.au/retailers.